Hey everyone, it's Emily, and today I want to talk about affordable JRPGs you can still find on the Nintendo DS and 3DS systems. Now that these systems are no longer being supported, it's becoming more difficult to find JRPGs that are still within the obtainable price ranges, since we've had plenty of games skyrocket in value the past few years, such as a lot of the Dragon Quest titles and some Atlas titles and Yokai Watch 3, to name a few. So today I wanted to share a list of games that are still affordable to collect, at least here in North America, because I do know in Europe and some other regions, the collecting scene and prices for completed box copies or just used carts are sometimes varied from what we see over here. And like in all my 3DS videos, there's always going to be someone in the comments who doesn't understand why someone would want to collect 3DS games right now. Well, there are plenty of us who still really enjoy owning games physically, so I just wanted to make this video to help some of you who may either be starting your collecting journey for the 3DS and DS systems or are still in the middle of it. The bulk of today's recommendations are going to be geared towards the 3DS, since most of those JRPGs are still in reasonable price ranges compared to the DS. But I will save a couple of DS recommendations towards the end. So I'm going to group all these games in different categories. So I'm going to start off with well-valued games. So these are 3DS games that are generally found under MSRP value. First one I'll talk about is Tales of the Abyss. So this one you could actually still get brand new copies for at retailers like Video Games Plus, and they often have this on sale. So you could often get it for a really good price if you are a little patient, or if you find it from another retailer who's selling it at a similar price range. This is an enhanced port of the PS2, and it's great to have this on handheld with extra quality of life features. I've yet to play this title myself, but it's one of the Tales of games that I'm looking forward to the most because it's so highly regarded in the franchise. And of course, I would be remiss not to mention Yokai Watch, the first game. And this one, unlike the third entry, is still reasonably priced and is a really interesting take on the JRPG kind of monster taming genre. So in this game you collect various yokai, and there's a different battle mechanic than one that I've seen before that does utilize the stylus pretty well. So I think it's one that's definitely worth picking up if you are interested and really enjoy games that involve monster taming and battling. And there was also a popular choice title on the 3DS, a Story of Seasons fairy tale. So this has a tie-in with the farming simulator Story of Seasons, and from what I've heard, it plays like a light Rune Factory kind of game where you do have some action-based combat. So if you're interested in a low-stakes, relaxing RPG, this may be one worth trying. And then another title that I don't have with me today is codenamed Steam, and this you could find still pretty dirt cheap, under $10, brand new sealed. And they really mass produced this game thinking it would be a hit, but unfortunately it really didn't do well towards the end of the 3DS life cycle. But if you enjoy Fire Emblem and other kind of strategy RPG games, this is developed by the same people, but it does have a slightly different combat system in that it's more like XCOM rather than turn-based strategy that you see in Fire Emblem. But I think at that price point, it's one that you definitely shouldn't ignore and probably should get while it's still cheap. And there's still plenty of Nintendo IP RPGs that are still in the obtainable levels. For example, you could still get Fire Emblem Awakening for a fantastic price, complete in box, as well as Fire Emblem Echoes here. And both of these are great games. I highly recommend them. You could also get Fire Emblem Conquest and Birthright. Unfortunately, not this copy because this was the one that was included in the special edition, but individually you could still get them, though I would personally recommend Awakening and Echoes before those two. And there's still plenty of other exclusive Nintendo titles. You can still get Bravely Default as well as Bravely Second for great prices as well. And with most of these Nintendo IP games, if you get the World Edition, this will be the cheapest option if you want a complete in-box set of these games. And there's no difference in the actual game cart that's inside. It's just the cover art. It's going to be a little bit different because this was originally sold in a different region using the North American game cart. And there are still rumors that this will get some sort of port on the Switch at some point. It hasn't happened yet, so I wouldn't hold my breath on that occurring. But given that there's a Bravely Default 2 on the Switch, I think it would be a little remiss to kind of leave these behind in the 3DS era and not bringing them forward to modern systems. And the last two games in this section I wanted to talk about are ones that actually have seen a dip in price, and they are now in the kind of attainable price ranges, so somewhere around MSRP, and ones that I do recommend picking up, such as Fantasy Life. And this is a really fun RPG, and I think this will be a great companion with the new Switch game that's supposed to be coming out sometime this year, to also experience on the system, because this one was a lot of fun originally. And there's also EverQuest here, which is another title that came towards the end of the 3DS life cycle that got slept on, but a really interesting take on kind of a management sim meets a dungeon crawler RPG. But speaking of enhanced ports and remasters, I have a stack of games here that have all actually come onto the Switch and some other platforms. But instead of maybe going for those newer releases of these games, the 3DS versions are still very well priced and may be interesting to pick up because the mechanics were really built for the 3DS with the stylus in mind. So it might be an interesting kind of way to experience them if you haven't yet. The first one is Monster Hunter Stories, and so this just came to the Switch. You could get it packed in with the sequel that's also on the Switch, or you could also buy it separately if you buy the Asian English edition from a retailer like PlayAsia or on eBay. But this is a very charming monster taming and battling game that I think worked really well on the 3DS, so it's definitely a system I think worth testing it out on if you're interested. And another favorite of mine is Rune Factory 4. This got a HD remaster on the Switch called Rune Factory 4 Special, but I really enjoyed my time playing the 3DS version of this, so might be worth dabbling into this one if you don't mind too much that it doesn't have some of the extra kind of marriage DLC on it that the Switch version has. And The Legend of Legacy also recently got a enhanced remaster on the Switch as well. And this one you could still find dirt cheap, or potentially the launch edition that came in a cardboard long box along with a soundtrack sampler and a art book as well. So definitely one to look into if you are looking to beef up your 3DS RPG collection. And this one is one I highly recommend getting on the 3DS because the enhanced remaster that came out physically is becoming more difficult to find on systems like the Switch and the PS4. But I personally really adored The Alliance Alive. It's one of my favorite games on the 3DS actually. So definitely I think nab this while it's still cheap on the 3DS if you weren't able to scoop it up on the Switch when it came out, kind of earlier in the Switch life cycle. And then the last game that got an HD port or remaster is Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. And this is available, I think, in one of the Kingdom Hearts collections you could get. And so that's definitely a way to play it, but I personally really enjoyed it on the 3DS. I think it worked really well just as a handheld game, and I thought the graphics were really nice. They did a really good job, I think, on the 3DS version. So it's definitely one to consider if you haven't played this game yet. Now we're going to segue into some affordable JRPGs that are still on the 3DS system, but they may be ones not worth getting in my opinion. The first one being Xenoblade Chronicles 3D. I think it's amazing that they're able to fit this wonderful game onto the 3DS, but honestly I think it's better to play the definitive edition that's on the Switch, because not only do you get to actually kind of explore the world at a grander scale, and it's a bit clearer to, I think, walk around and do the battle system in that version. It also comes with additional story bits as a epilogue that I think is also worth playing. That's not included in this one. And there were a handful of 3DS games that really used the, I think, local co-op multiplayer functions to really enhance the experience. And unfortunately, those servers are now down. There are ways around to kind of access them now, but not really using your physical game cart. So games like Final Fantasy Explorers or Heroes of Ruin may not be worth getting, even though they are rather cheap still. And the last game in this section is one that I think you could totally pick up if it's a title that interests you. It's a really quirky concept that I don't think will appeal to everyone, and that is Conception 2. So this is kind of considered more of a fan servicey light game, and that the concept is a little wacky where you have to conceive children in order to battle with them. and it's kind of has a lot of weird euphemisms, if you will. But this game is also available on some other systems like the PS Vita, which may be a better experience than what they did for the 3DS version. And I did also want to highlight 2 games that unfortunately are known to have faulty game cartridges. So if you were in the market to buy these, you may want to double check to see if you have a functioning game cart when you do purchase them. The first being the Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, as well as the Ruby Red games. I know this, I think, is less affected in the North American region, but definitely I think in Europe, a lot of these game carts kind of tend to fail just due to some faulty manufacturing issues. My copy is still working, thankfully, and I've beaten it, so I won't be too sad if mine ends up kind of dying in a couple of years, but it's definitely something to be aware of. And this also happened with Persona Q, and this was just in the first batch of games. They fixed the issue on the second print release, but I don't think there's a way to tell the difference whether or not you have a first print run of the game versus a second print run. I ended up getting my copy off of Video Games Plus, where they made a statement that it was the second print run of the game, so I kind of knew this was the safe version. But if you end up getting this game like in the collector's edition or from someone who got it around launch, it's possible that that game cart might not be working anymore. Now, I went through a bunch of 3DS JRPGs that are still on the affordable scale, but I did want to mention a few heavy hitters on the 3DS that are kind of more of a stretch game. So they haven't reached quite astronomical prices like Yokai Watch 3 yet, but they still cost more than MSRP right now. But I do think it's still worth giving these games a second look because they are really excellent titles. The first being Radiant Historia, Perfect Chronology. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, JRPG on the 3DS system. They just did the time traveling mechanic so well, and I loved the battle system. And this is an enhanced edition of the DS game. So if you wanted, you could actually buy the Nintendo DS version of Radiant Historia, and it's going to have all the same story notes. What changes are the graphical character profiles, and they also added voice acting as well as a third new route. And so there are differences between the two games, but if you want just the core Radiant Historia story, you could definitely get the DS version instead of the 3DS version if you wanted. In a similar vein, I also really loved Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor Overload for the 3DS, and this is another kind of enhanced version of a DS game. And I believe the DS game is cheaper, but the thing with the DS game is that it's very difficult, and there are some more quality of life features that they included in the 3DS game. So if you don't want to get too frustrated and you haven't played that many SMT games before, it might be worth paying a little bit extra for the 3DS version rather than the DS version. And another SMT title that I think is worth getting, because it's possible they might do some sort of remaster down the line, but knowing Atlas, who knows what year that will be when that comes out. And that is Shin Megami Tensei 4. And I've played a good portion of this game, and I really enjoyed it. It has such a great dark, moody atmosphere, and battles are a lot of fun. There are definitely difficult moments in this game, especially navigating certain parts of the map, but overall, I think it's a great experience, and if you're interested in Shin Megami Tensei at all, definitely one worth picking up. And another Atlas series, though I'm going to be just showing one of the games that I think are worth getting on the 3DS, despite it being a little bit more expensive than some other options, are the Etrian Odyssey games. I'm holding up Etrian Odyssey 5 here because this one I believe you could get the cheapest out of the bunch, but it's still worth kind of looking into some of the other games like 4, as well as the Untold versions of 1 and 2. And there was a Switch HD remaster of the first 3 Etrian Odyssey games, but unfortunately those were based off of the DS games and not the 3DS games that included the Untold narrative stories. It's also worth noting that playing these games on the 3DS system, you get to kind of utilize the map maker with the stylus, and that's really the intended way that they design these games, and it's kind of lost when you play the Switch version, in my opinion. And the last game I wanted to talk about that is, again, kind of a stretch title, but it's not in the unobtainable region quite yet, is one of the Yokai Watch 2 games. So there are 3 different versions of this game, and they all have different varying price ranges. But this one, along with the one that came out simultaneously, are, I think, in the still obtainable region if you wanted to play more Yokai Watch games. And this one is a little bit different from the first game and changes up the gameplay slightly, and from what I hear, for the better. Then last but not least are some Nintendo DS games that are still hovering around the affordable price range or even less. So I think it's definitely worth at least considering a few of these titles. The first one is Magical Star Sign. In this game, you are part of this magical school, and they have a really unique approach to using the stylus to tap on the screen as part of the combat system that I think a lot of DS games heavily utilized back in the day. And this one you can still find complete in box for $40 or less. So it's definitely one I think worth considering. And another one worth considering around that same price range is The World Ends With You. And this did end up getting a Switch remaster version, but honestly, I would totally avoid the Switch version because of the controls. This game was designed to utilize the stylus in the lower half of the DS screen with heavy use, and I don't think that translated very well on the Switch release. But thankfully, you could still get the DS version of this. And a game that you could still find brand new in this price range is Valkyrie Profile, The Covenant of the Plume. And this is a strategy RPG in the Valkyrie Profile universe. I do hear this has some high difficulty spikes, so if you really want a challenge, this might be something to consider, or if you also just really love strategy RPGs, definitely one to look into. And then another strategy game that you could find in the $40 price range is Final Fantasy Tactics A2. This is not the version that has the NVIDIA leak rumor, so you're probably safe from getting some sort of remaster down the line in the near future. And then last but not least is a game that is very expensive to get in North America, but what's great about the DS and DS games is that they are region free. And one game that you could actually import from Japan that includes English on the cart, so you're able to play this both on your 3DS or your DS here, is Chrono Trigger. And this one you could easily get for $40, I think, on eBay, but if you use a proxy service or if you happen to be in Japan, you could definitely get this for much less. And this is, of course, a classic that I don't need to talk about and explain why you might want to consider getting this, but this is one of the best ways to play and experience Chrono Trigger and have a physical edition of it for a great price. And there's still plenty of DS JRPGs you can still find in the $30 to $40 price range for complete in-box copies. So that was a rather extensive list of some JRPGs that are still affordable on the 3DS and DS systems. But let me know if I missed any affordable JRPGs that are still available on the 3DS and DS systems, or if you have any highly recommended games that are worth shelling out a little bit extra cash in order to obtain physically. I'd love to hear those and other discussions of some of your favorite JRPG, 3DS, and DS games. And until my next video, bye guys.